Hello, I'm Nigel Saunders, and you've just entered the Bonsai Zone. Today's video will start with my two Ficus sisters. These two trees were almost identical when I bought them, and I'm training them in different styles. I'm styling the tree on the right-hand side here with all kinds of multi-trunks and branches coming up from the root base. The tree on the left-hand side is a simpler form. It has one trunk coming up from the root base, and then it divides into a few upright multi-trunks, but not as complicated as this one. Here's a close-up of all the multi-upright trunks that form the canopy on this tree. And on the simpler tree, we have the one trunk coming up and dividing from 1 into 2, and 2 into 4, and that type of a pattern. These two trees have been left to grow all summer without any pruning at all, to strengthen them up and grow the trunks thicker and the branches thicker. And summer is slowly coming to an end, so I'm going to have to do a pruning to them before I bring them back inside for the winter. I'm going to start the styling work on the tree with the more simple form. My original plan with the styling was to have the trunk come up, be very simple, divide into vertical upright trunks, and have no branches down below. I got looking at pictures of ficus trees in nature, and a lot of trees still have these upright trunks, but they do still fill out with branches down below. For this tree, I'm going to keep my simplified main structure with my upright trunks, but I'm also going to grow out all these side branches to create a rounded silhouette to the canopy. I think the combination of a strong upright structure and a lot of horizontal branches will give the tree a really naturalistic type look. I'm going to use my hand again to check the height of the canopy to kind of picture where I want it. I can make it flatter, I can make it rounded. So it gives me a lot of flexibility. I think for this tree, maybe somewhere about here. This is all the new growth from this year up top here. Maybe more rounded like that. It looks pretty good. Yeah, so somewhere about there. That's kind of my pruning guide. I'll get out the toolbox and get to work. One thing I noticed about my new toolbox is it looks an awful lot like Wally. I'm going to start high in the canopy here and work my way down, and I want to find the point where the old growth from last year ends and the new growth from this summer begins. On this branch, I followed it down. Here's where I pruned it last, right here. So this is new growth and this is new growth. So I'll prune the new growth back to the first set of leaves. As I do this pruning, I'm using directional pruning. So I'll prune just above a leaf that I want the new direction to grow in. So I don't want the growth to come inside towards the center of the tree. I want to pick a leaf that's facing outwards from the center of the tree and prune just above that. So in this branch, I'll prune just right here. As I'm pruning this top growth, I'm using directional pruning, and I'm also keeping in mind the final rounded shape I want the canopy to be. As you're working away at pruning, it's important to step back from the tree and look at the profile. Put your hand over, see what's sticking out of the profile, where you have to prune it, so you get the final shape of the tree how you want it. I'm finished what I would call my first pass at pruning the tree to a profile. So now I want to go in and look at the branch structure. I want to remove anything that's growing in towards the center of the tree, so everything's fanning out with the branch structure. So I'm going to go in and have a more detailed look at the structure of the tree. When I'm pruning the upper canopy for structure, I like to go above the tree like this and have a look at it from above so you can see what branches are crossing, what branches are growing in towards the center of the tree, and remove those branches. You should also watch that your branches come up and divide from 1 into 2, and then that branch divides from 1 into 2, and 1 into 2, and so on. So you can see at this branch here, I've got this branch comes up, divides into 2, and then I'm dividing into 3 at this point. So I should remove one of those branches. If I keep 3 branches growing from one point, I'll get an ugly bulge here that'll just keep getting worse in the future. Here's a close-up of this junction where I've got one dividing into three. So I want to remove one of those branches, and I have to decide which one. On this tree, and with all my trees, I'm looking for the best possible flow line. So something that flows naturally from this trunk and divides into two. I don't want upright bends in my branches or trunks. I want everything to flow smoothly. So my first thought is to remove this one sticking out the front here and keep my two nice flowing branches here. For this operation, I'll use my branch pruners, and I'll come in and try and get a nice, slightly concave cut, like that. Now I'll continue to follow this trunk up. So we come up, we're dividing from one into two here, which is good. There is a branch growing inside up here that I'll have to remove, so I'll do that right here. So that's gone. So we're still dividing from one into two here. We'll follow this one up, and we're dividing from one to two here, following this one to two. I'm going to follow all my trunk lines up the tree to the apex, making sure that all the branches are dividing from 1 to 2, and I don't have any 1 to 3 junctions. I've got all my upper structure here cleaned up from about here above the tree. I haven't touched these lower branches yet. And I'll show you a view from the top here looking down, and you'll see how much cleaner all these upright trunks look. There's not so many crossing branches, and it divides cleanly from 1 to 2, and then 2 to 4, and 4 to 8, and so on. Here's a view from up top now. So I hope you can kind of see how clean the structure is there, the main branches and trunks. The next area of the tree I want to tackle is all these lower branches. I want to make sure they're growing in the right direction. I don't have doubles, and prune them up so they're not so straight. You can see the branches coming from this point. I've got 1, 2, 3 branches growing from the same area. So I want to simplify that down to 1. I don't want these branches to be growing upright to compete with the main trunks up higher, so I'm going to definitely prune off these more vertical ones. After pruning the vertical one off, I'm left with 2 branches to decide on. And I can always grow a branch thicker, but you can't make them thinner, so I'm thinking if I was to prune off the thicker one, I've got a thinner branch down here to work with. So I think I'll do that. So I'll come in with my branch pruners, and I'm going to take off the thicker one. Like that. Just a little higher in the tree, I have a similar decision. I have 2 branches, both growing from one spot. So again, looking at the front of the tree, this one kind of comes straight towards the viewer, so I definitely don't want those. Those are called eye poker branches, so I'm going to remove that one. The other one, I'm just going to prune it for ramification, so I'll just take part of the tip off like that, and it'll subdivide from 1 branch to 2 there. And again, just a little higher up, I have 3 branches growing from one spot here. So again, I'm going to pick the branch. I definitely don't want this one that crosses in front of the tree, so I'll remove that one. I always remove the obvious ones first. And I'm left with 2 now to decide upon. And again, I'm going to take the thinner branch, so I'm going to remove my thicker one and keep the little tiny thin one here. As I said, you can always let that branch grow out and it'll get thicker, but you can't make a thicker branch any thinner. Higher up, I also have some branches coming straight out that I want to remove. Get rid of that. I have a strong branch out the side here that I want to prune back also to get some movement in it. Prune it back to there. There's one out the back that I can prune shorter. And one over here. I don't like this one sticking out towards the viewer, so I'm going to prune that one off also. I don't like this one on the inside of the curve here. I'm going to get rid of that. I've got 2 branches very close to each other here. I think I'm going to remove the thick one behind. This one back here. Like that. So I'm just back having a look at it now. You can definitely see the structure of the trunk more clearly now. And I still think those small branches make it look a little more natural than if I just had a plain trunk going up without any lower branches. You can still see the thicker upper structure, which looks good. So maybe a little more pruning to some of the back branches. They're a little long and straight, so I'm going to prune them back a little shorter to get a little more ramification. Here's a side view looking at those back branches. So I'll just prune them off for ramification, making them a little shorter. Here's the amount of foliage that I removed in this pruning session. And remember, without the tree growing, you shouldn't do any clipping. So for clip and grow, you've got to let the tree grow and then you prune it back. Let it grow again, prune it back. It's starting to get dark now, so I'm standing back looking at the tree from the distance, looking at the overall shape and structure. And I think it looks pretty good. I think it looks very natural. Looks like a tree you would see growing in the tropics. So the next job will be to clean up the root base. Clean up all that moss that's growing up the trunk. For this operation, I'll be using my tweezers and coming in and just picking the moss off the trunk. When your roots are covered in moss, they don't get the bark texture like the trunk on them. So you want to make sure you keep the moss cleaned off your roots the best you can. This usually means coming in a couple of times a year and just picking all the moss off your roots. I usually clean it away from the base of the tree also, so it gives you a little more time before it starts growing up the trunk again. You can also use a toothbrush. It helps you clean it off also. You can see on the roots here, this is where I carved the roots to divide one thick root into two. And it's healing over really nicely, and we're getting a good look to the root base. Over here also, you can see where I carved it away, and the root's healing over and becoming rounded, so it's looking like a natural root again. So that technique's working really well, dividing one root into two. Last week we had a chance of frost. The temperature went down to 3 degrees overnight. So I had to bring all my trees, all my tropical trees into the plant room for the night. And I filled my greenhouse with trees also. This week it's possible we're going to go down to 4 degrees Celsius, which is not a whole lot above freezing. It doesn't harm the trees to go down to those temperatures, but if you do get a frost, it'll kill them. So better safe than sorry when it comes to frost. You can't tell from the camera, but it's actually getting quite dark out. Maybe you can hear the crickets chirping in the background. So I'm going to have to leave this till tomorrow, and I'll resume work on the Ficus sisters, where we'll be starting to prune the fancy one. Welcome back to day 2 of the Ficus sisters. I've got the simple ficus all pruned up, and I was just cleaning up the root base. It's been a rainy day today. The temperatures have cooled off. So I've been cleaning up my plant room, getting ready for the winter. But now the rain stopped, so I can come out and work on the ficus trees some more. I'm just getting some more of this moss off the roots. I've got the surrounding moss all pruned up with the scissors. I've got a really big root here that I may have to remove in future. Here's that root here. It's a big one of those big potato type roots that kind of curls around. That'll have to be all cut away. There's the ficus all cleaned up now, pruned up, looking the best it can for now. My first video on this tree was 3 years ago. I have a playlist called Ficus Sisters, and I was looking back at it to see if I had made any progress on this tree. And yeah, it has made a lot of progress. The upper trunks have thickened up a lot. I've got a lot more ramification on the top and everywhere. My trunk has matured more. So it's come a long way, even though it doesn't look dramatically different. Next up is my Ficus Fancy. Both these trees in this video are Ficus microcarpas. I just call one plain and one fancy. Here's a shot of the tree. So again, I'll use my hand. We'll come in and see how we want to prune this. Do we want it round or flatter? Interesting. I think the original height was about here. It was pruned kind of to about that shape. Just from looking at the old leaves, which are a slightly darker green color. I'm thinking it might look a little better, more rounded on top. To maybe there. So somewhere around there. Let's start pruning. Even though this tree has a very fat base to it, I'm still after a nice smooth transition from the roots, the root flare, going up the trunk, and then into the branches. So a nice, everything's got a flow, even though it's going to be a shorter tree. Won't be as, tall and elegant, but I still want it to look beautiful, having nice flowing branches. I'm going to start by pruning some of these branches that are hanging down. There's one back here that we can prune off. The one that's hanging down at the front here, I think I can just push it up into the canopy and it'll stay there. And as it grows, it'll thicken up and stay in that position. I don't think I have to wire it up there. This one's growing a nice direction here. It's starting to hang down from its weight. As these branches get heavier, they'll start to hang down. So I don't want that to happen yet. As the canopy gets up higher, then I want the outer branches to start hanging down. But I want to build all this structure more upright for now. So I'm going to trim those back shorter so they don't have as much weight on them. So I think I'll just prune it to a downward facing leaf. To there. I'll prune this one to here. And this one to here. I'll make that branch a little lighter. I'll prune off these leaves hanging down low here. They're not doing much good in the shade here anyway. Not so sure about that branch either. It's kind of crossing. I think I can position it better out front here. Maybe like that. Yeah, that's a little better. I think there's a branch here that's... This branch goes up, and there's a horizontal branch that comes out and comes up, and there's another horizontal branch. So I'm going to move this lower one. It's kind of in the way of the branches behind it. And it's too low to get horizontal branching yet on this tree. That'll come later on in life. This is the back of the tree here now. So there's a lot of low branches here that are also kind of cluttering up the design. So I want to remove those. Another one here. There's some little shoots here, which I don't think I want. Yeah, I don't think I want those little shoots. I'm going to remove them. There's another horizontal branch here I'm going to remove. It's too low. Some of these lower leaves can go. There's a branch back here I can remove. Some more of these lower leaves. I finished cleaning up the underside of the tree, and you can see it makes a dramatic difference. You can now see the flare of the roots going up into the curvature of the upright branches. So next I'm going to prune up the canopy, getting it to a nice curvature. I'm thinking about there. Looks pretty good. So somewhere around there. Alright, let's go in and do that. I'll start by picking my maximum height of the tree, so where I want the apex to be. And I'm thinking probably somewhere in here. So I'll come down and prune all these vertical shoots off. Again, when I'm pruning, I'm doing directional pruning just above outward facing leaves. I'm also watching the profile to get my canopy to the correct shape. So I'm about halfway through the pruning, I would say. I've got a lot of cleaning up to do to get the profile a little better. So I'll keep working away and we'll come back. I finished pruning the top canopy now. I'm pretty happy with it. It looks nice and low and wide, like a mature tropical tree. It's starting to rain again. So I'm gonna work on cleaning up the base of the tree next. I'm gonna have to get all my tools in out of the rain and my camera. So I'll work away at that, maybe inside the greenhouse, and we'll come back. I've got the root base cleaned up now, so there's a look at the tree. When I go to repot this tree, I want to reposition some of these aerial roots. They're kind of crossing in front here. They could be repositioned more to the side so they flow in with the base of the tree better. So yeah, I'll look forward to doing that. That's all the work I'll be doing on the Ficus sisters today. I waited all summer so I could finally prune them up in fall. It'll be interesting to see how these trees develop in the future. They both started out looking almost the same, and using different pruning techniques and styling, they'll look like two completely different trees in the end. It's time now for today's update. Today's update is my catalpa tree. It's been quite a while since I've made a video with my catalpa tree. I'm not sure if this is a northern catalpa or a southern catalpa. The southern catalpa has the better flowers on it. They're more showy and a little larger. So I'm not sure which this is, but we'll keep growing it. The tree's starting to get some really nice bark texture. The old plates of bark are starting to flake off, and you can see all the new growth underneath. In my original plan for this tree, I planned on this as the leader, and I was going to remove this tall part of the tree. But this leader died off, and this one just kept growing stronger, so that plan won't work anymore. I've got two new branches down below here. If I reduced my height down to those branches, it'd make quite a stumpy looking tree. I'm not sure I want to do that. So it may be that I just do a trunk chop somewhere up here next spring and see what happens down below. In the last video, I planted a pot full of northern catalpa seedlings, and they did really well all summer, but I think I left them outside too long and they got too cold and they died over the winter. Here's a shot of all my new seedlings. They're all southern catalpas, so they get the really nice flowers. I may have overcompensated for the loss of my other seedlings by planting way too many this year. However, hopefully they'll get through the winter. I'm going to bring them in much earlier this year, so as soon as their leaves fall off, they'll go downstairs into the cold part of the basement, the unheated basement. They'll overwinter there, and if they make it next spring, I'll have lots of trees to give away to fellow Bonsai Club members. It's time now for viewers' picks. Wilson from Markham, Ontario has sent in two pictures. He's got a nice twisty juniper and a variegated leaf Ficus benjamina bonsai. I've also got pictures from Himanshu. He sent in pictures of his betel nut bonsai and his banana bonsai. Very unique. So thanks. That's all for today. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.